There are certain birthdays you never forget. Not because something amazing happened, but because something shifted. That year in Ridgeview, my 18th birthday came wrapped in exhaustion. Mom had been pulling 16-hour shifts at the clinic, sleeping maybe 3 hours a night. Even so, she smiled, handed me a crumpled 50 and said, "Go buy yourself something fun, Eli. Don't just save it again." That was Mom, too tired to breathe, but still worried that I wasn't having enough fun. The sky was dull pewter when I left the apartment. Light rain smeared everything into soft focus. Cars, sidewalks, even the people looked half washed away. HarborMart stood a few blocks down the hill, its flickering sign buzzing like an electric insect. The parking lot smelled of wet asphalt and cheap food. Inside, the first breath of refrigerated air hit me like always, sharp, sterile, and too cold to feel human. My little sister Lila stayed by the doors, scrolling her phone under the warm blower. "I'll be quick," I told her. She barely looked up. The store lights hummed overhead in long white lines. I cut through the bakery, past the aisles of cereal boxes that all looked like noise, and went straight for electronics. The game section sat half hidden behind office supplies, like even HarborMart was embarrassed to have fun. But there it was, a single copy of Steel Kingdoms IV tucked behind an empty display. I laughed quietly. Small victories matter when your life's this small. I turned, holding the case, and that's when I saw him. He stood at the end of the aisle. Tall, lean, wearing torn cargo shorts and a faded white t-shirt. His hat caught my eye. Dark green, stitched with the words "Velvet Rats." The brim shadowed most of his face, but his smile cut through it, polite, thin. "Wrong." He raised his hand in a lazy half-wave. Out of reflex, I nodded back. Mom had trained me to be nice even to strangers. That was mistake number one. He started walking toward me. His steps were slow and deliberate. "Good pick," he rasped. "Are you into co-op games?" My boy loves those. His breath carried a sour mix of beer and peppermint. My stomach turned. Yeah, sometimes." He nodded again, a smile freezing on his face. "PS or Xbox?" "PS. Same as my kid." But his eyes didn't match the friendliness. They stayed flat, glassy, calculating. He didn't have a basket, no cart. Just empty hands. I muttered something like "have a good night" and sidestepped him. He pivoted too. Not blocking me, just mirroring me. I moved faster, pretending to check the next aisle. The hum of the lights sounded louder. When I looked over my shoulder, he was still there, pretending to read a row of phone chargers. My phone buzzed. "Lila, are you done yet?" "Me, almost. Be there in a sec." When I looked up, he'd changed aisles, now near seasonal decor, staring at a wall of Halloween masks. It would have looked normal if he wasn't glancing sideways every few seconds, tracking my reflection in the mirror dome above the aisle. That's when I felt it. That primal signal in your gut that says you're being sized up. I cut across the main walkway toward the registers. The cashier, a college kid half asleep, scanned my game without even glancing up. "Have a good night," he murmured. I forced a nod, paid, and looked behind me. The man was gone, or so I thought. The sliding doors opened. The smell of rain and hot asphalt hit me. Across the lot, puddles reflected HarborMart's sign like broken mirrors. Lila was standing by the heater, hood up. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I lied. I was about to walk her to the car when movement caught my eye. At the far end of the parking lot sat a red panel van. No headlights. Engine idling softly. A faint shape appeared through the windshield, suggesting that someone was watching. "Buckle up," I whispered. She frowned. "What? Just do it. We got in." My hand shook as I turned the key. The wipers squealed across the windshield. The van didn't move. As I reversed, I looked one last time through the glass doors. The man was standing just inside the store, still facing us, pretending to look at a magazine rack. The reflection of the overhead lights flickered across his cap. He smiled, a small private smile, and then tilted his head as if to say, "See you soon." I drove off, heart pounding. The van stayed exactly where it was. That night, sleep came in fragments. Every sound felt too loud. Every passing car sounded like that van pulling up outside. By morning, the fear dulled into embarrassment. Maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe he really did have a kid. People shop late all the time. I convinced myself it was nothing. For a week, life returned to its small, predictable rhythm. School, part-time job, games, sleep. But fear doesn't vanish. It waits. It was the last day of school before winter break, a Friday, cold and damp. I left early, half awake, the streets empty except for fog rolling low over the asphalt. The bus stop stood at the corner near an old laundromat. The hum of its dryers filled the silence like background noise for a dream. I had been waiting 20 minutes when I heard it. The slow growl of an engine. A maroon pickup emerged from the mist, headlights dull, creeping along the curb. It stopped a few feet away from me. The window rolled down just enough for me to see the brim of that same velvet rat's cap. He smiled. "Morning, gamer." Then he winked and drove away, vanishing into the fog like he'd never been there. The bus arrived a minute later. My legs barely worked as I climbed the steps. The driver asked if I was okay. I nodded, unable to speak. That night I told myself it was coincidence again. Maybe he lived nearby. Maybe he was on his way to work. But deep down, I knew. Because coincidences don't smile at you like they're remembering a joke, only they understand. We moved across town a month later when Mom got offered a full-time schedule at another clinic. Different neighborhood, new bus stop, new everything. For a while, life went back to normal. But HarborMart never really left my head. Occasionally, I'd see its flickering sign from the freeway. That buzzing green glow that looked half dead, half alive. And sometimes on quiet nights, I'd think I saw a red van parked under a broken lamp in the distance. You tell yourself ghosts only haunt the guilty. But the truth is, sometimes they haunt the almost victims, the ones who got away. Last winter, I went back there once. Not for any real reason, just passing through old streets. Curiosity, maybe. HarborMart looked smaller than I remembered. The paint was chipped, the sign darker, but the doors still hissed open with that same mechanical sigh. Inside, everything smelled of dust and lemon cleaner. The aisles looked narrower, the lights dimmer. For a moment, I almost convinced myself it had all been in my head. Then I saw it, a stain on the floor in electronics right near where I'd met him. Not blood, not paint, just something dark that had soaked deep into the tile, and on the pegboard above, half torn, was a small sticker that read, "Velvet Rats Tour 2007. No one else seemed to notice it. I didn't stay long. When I left, the air outside was thick and cold. I walked to my car, trying not to look at the edges of the lot. But curiosity, or stupidity, made me glance left. There, under the same broken light, sat an old red van. No plates on the front. No driver in sight. For a long moment, I stood frozen. The rain tapped the roof like fingers. Then the van's engine coughed once, alive again. I didn't wait to see more. When I reached home that night, I deleted every old picture from my phone that showed HarborMart. Every selfie in that parking lot, every birthday post tagged there. Like erasing it could make it stop existing. But fear doesn't vanish when you delete its photo. It lingers quietly in the background, waiting for the right time to appear again. Sometimes I wake at night thinking I hear an engine idling outside. Sometimes it's just the wind. Sometimes not. People always tell you to be nice, polite, and respectful. They say don't judge strangers too quickly. But they never tell you that evil studies those same manners, learns them, and uses them to come close. Monsters rarely look like monsters. Sometimes they look like tired men in faded shirts smiling through their teeth. If your gut ever whispers run, listen. If it screams something's wrong, you don't owe anyone an explanation. That's the rule that keeps me breathing. Now, whenever I pass a store at night and see my reflection in the glass, I keep walking. Because reflections can hide more than they show. And if I ever see another man in a velvet rat's cap, even across a crowded street, I won't wave back ever again. I've worked nights at North HarborMart for 3 years. It isn't glamorous, but steady money never is. My boyfriend and I split rent on a 1-bedroom near the highway. He handled mornings. I handled everything after 10 p.m. The job was simple enough. Mop, restock, and ensure that nobody stole detergent at 3 a.m. Still, something about the store after hours felt different, like the fluorescent lights hummed in. Another language once customers left. It was the last week of April when my manager, scheduled me 5 consecutive closing shifts. He didn't care that I had an 8 a.m. college class on Wednesdays. Just part of the grind, he said. By night 4, I was running on caffeine and a poor attitude. That Thursday, rain lashed the windows severely enough to blur the parking lot lamps. We were set to close at 11 by 10:40. Only 2 people remained, me and Seth. The register led, an easygoing guy who whistled old rock songs while counting tills. I was mopping aisle 9 when I heard the faint squeak of shoes somewhere down the corridor. It startled me because I'd personally walked the store 5 minutes earlier to clear customers. Hello? I called, leaning on the mop handle. Silence. I shrugged it off, maybe an echo. Still, a strange pressure settled in my chest. When I pushed the mop bucket around the next corner, I saw him. A man stood in the arts and crafts section, back turned, scanning the shelves like he was looking for something precious. He wore a dark jacket, jeans soaked at the hems, and a baseball cap pulled low. Nothing alarming except we were officially closed. "Hey, sorry," I said politely. "We're done for tonight. You can come back in the morning." He froze, then slowly looked over his shoulder. His face was pale, eyes shadowed, but he smiled. "Oh, right, just one last thing. Won't take a second." Something about the tone felt practiced. Still, I didn't want a complaint, so I nodded. "Okay, make it quick." I radioed Seth, telling him there was one more customer finishing up. "No problem," he said. "I'll wait at the register." The man moved deeper into the aisle. I finished mopping, wheeled the bucket back to storage, and decided to use the restroom before clocking out. The front bathrooms were taped off, broken plumbing, so I had to use the employee restroom in the stockroom behind the store. I hung my vest on the hook, locked the stall, and sat down, ready to text my boyfriend that I'd be late. 30 seconds later, the door opened. "Footsteps, Seth?" I called. No answer. The steps stopped. I frowned and texted Seth, "Are you back here?" He replied instantly, "Still up front counting tills, why?" Before I could type again, something shifted outside the stall. A faint scuff against tile. I looked up. Through the thin gap between door and frame, an eye stared back at me. I screamed, louder than I thought. "Possible." The sound bounced off the metal walls. I shoved the stall door with all my weight. It slammed into something solid, the man. He stumbled backward, hitting the floor with a grunt. I didn't look. I yanked my vest, burst out the door, and sprinted down the corridor toward the sales floor. "Seth!" I shouted. He turned just as I reached him, face pale when he saw me. "What happened?" "Someone's in the back." "He was in the bathroom. Before I finished." We both heard it, a heavy clank from the rear door. Seth grabbed the phone behind the counter and called 911. We waited near the exit, hearts hammering, until the blue and red lights spilled through the glass. 2 officers arrived within minutes. The officers instructed us to remain where we were while they searched the back area. From the doorway, I could see the beams of their flashlights cutting through the dim aisles. One of them radioed something. Then came the shout, "Got him!" The officers marched the man out moments later, cuffs on, eyes wide and twitching. He looked different under real light, older, thinner, his jacket soaked. In his back pocket was a 4-inch hunting knife from our outdoor section, still wrapped in price tags. They said he'd broken the emergency door alarm weeks ago, slipping in after closing most nights to steal food and camp behind storage. That night, he'd apparently waited for the last employee to be alone. We gave our statements. The officers assured me he'd go to jail. Again. "Again?" I asked. One nodded. "The same guy was arrested last year for stalking a woman at the South HarborMart, released early for good behavior." The words didn't comfort me. After they left, I sat in the break room shaking, the mop still leaning where I'd left it. Seth offered me a ride home. I said yes without thinking. The next morning, sunlight felt wrong, too bright, too clean. At school, I couldn't focus. Every hallway echo sounded like footsteps behind me. My boyfriend tried to joke and said I should switch jobs. I told him I needed the paycheck. But that night, when I reached for my vest, my hands wouldn't stop trembling. I worked day shifts for a month after that, insisting to management it was schedule preference. Eventually, new hires took over nights. Then, in early July, my manager asked me to cover one night again. "Only 5 hours," he said. "The regular guy's sick." I wanted to refuse, but I also needed overtime money for rent. I convinced myself enough time had passed. The shift began quietly. Empty aisles, the hum of freezers and radio static. By 1 a.m., the store was dead silent except for the flicker of ceiling lights. At 1:30, while restocking paper towels, I heard it, a soft knock from the rear hallway, 3 taps, paused, 2 taps. I froze. The sound repeated, deliberate, rhythmic. I walked toward the noise, telling myself it was the plumbing or the air vent. But when I reached the end of the corridor, the supply door handle twitched. Something scraped metal on the other side. "Who's there?" I demanded. No answer. I backed away, heart racing, and radioed security. Our night guard, Marco, came down within seconds. We listened. Silence. He opened the door fast. Flashlight raised, nothing. Just rain blowing in through a half-broken latch. He relocked it, turned to me and said, "Relax, Jess. Probably the wind." Maybe. Still, when I walked back to aisle 13, I noticed muddy footprints leading from that hallway. Small, uneven prints that weren't there before. For weeks after that, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Sometimes the motion sensors triggered in empty aisles. Sometimes items fell for no reason. Management blamed faulty wiring. One night, I found a folded receipt left on my register. No purchase listed, just 2 words scrawled in shaky handwriting. Still here. The store replaced every back door lock within days. Police checked. Cameras caught nothing clear. The man from before was still in jail, or so they said. But fear doesn't care about paperwork. Whenever I close now, I keep my phone flashlight on and the restroom door propped open. Every squeak, every drip, every echo feels personal, like the store remembers him or he remembers me. I still work there, though. Rent's rent, but I've learned something that night shift workers understand better than anyone. When the store lights flicker just once, and all the hums stop for half a second, it means you're not alone. Some nights don't go bad all at once, they rot slowly, one small decision at a time. Back in 2019, I worked late shifts at HarborMart East Ridge. I was 23, newly single, broke, and running on instant coffee and denial. I usually clocked out around 1 a.m., when the store closed to customers but stayed open for restocking. The parking lot was massive, long rows of lamps that flickered like dying stars. At that hour, everything looked abandoned except a few employee cars and a single white delivery van that always sat under the last light. The first time I noticed it, I assumed it belonged to maintenance, but after 2 weeks it was still there, never moving, never turning its lights on. First night, it was late November, the temperature dropping fast, wind scraping plastic bags across the lot. I walked out with my friend Tessa, who worked in produce. "Want a ride?" she asked. I shook my head. "I live close. Need the walk. Suit yourself." She waved and drove off. As her taillights disappeared, the parking lot fell silent except for the buzz of street lamps. That's when I saw movement inside the white van. Just a flicker. Like a shadow leaning forward. I told myself it was imagination. Still, I picked up my pace. When I reached my car, my keys slipped twice before they fit. I started the engine, heart pounding. In the rearview mirror, the van's driver's side door opened, then slowly closed again. Second night, the next evening, the van was there before my shift even started. Same spot, same light flickering above it. By 1 a.m., most workers had gone. I told the night manager, "Rick, about it, probably security," he grunted, "or an overnight stock truck." "Don't worry about it," so I didn't. It wasn't until my break at 2 a.m. that I took action. I went out to my car for a smoke. The lot was quiet. Too quiet. Halfway through my cigarette, I heard the soft click of a car door somewhere behind me, then the shuffle of boots. "Rick?" I called, no answer. I dropped the smoke, crushed it under my shoe, and turned. The van's headlights flashed once, not bright enough to blind, just a single pulse. I went back inside faster than I'd ever admit. Third night rain hammered the roof for hours. Only me. Rick and the overnight janitor, Marcos, were in the store. Around 3 a.m., the power blinked twice. When the lights returned, Rick said, "The backup generator kicked in. We'll close early." By 3:30, he was gone. Marcos mopped near the bakery. I was left in the front aisles, scanning shelves for mislabeled stock. Thunder rolled outside. When I looked through the glass entrance doors, I saw headlights again, same spot, same van. Except this time the engine was running. I told Marcos. He shrugged. Delivery guys sometimes nap out there. But when we checked the manifest, there were no deliveries scheduled. At 4 a.m., my nerves were shredded. I decided to leave early and call it a night. As I walked out, rain soaked the parking lot like a mirror. My car was 30 yards from the door. The van's engine cut off. A beat of silence. Then the driver's door opened. A man stepped out slowly, wearing a dark hooded jacket that clung to his skin from rain. He stood under the lamp, motionless. I couldn't see his face, but his head tilted slightly as if he was studying me. "May I help you?" I shouted across the lot. He didn't answer. He just lifted his hand and pointed directly at me. I froze, then ran. My shoes splashed through puddles, keys jingling like bells. When I glanced back, he was walking toward me, not running, just walking with steady purpose. I reached my car, fumbled the door open, and slammed it shut. For 5 seconds, I couldn't move. Then I hit reverse and sped away. In my mirror, I saw him still standing there in the rain, watching. The van never moved. Days after, I didn't sleep for 2 nights. When I finally went back to work, day shift felt safe. Crowded, bright, normal, but that comfort vanished when I checked the security report. Binder. There was no record of a white van, no footage. Saved. Cameras at the front lot had been down for maintenance. I asked Rick again. He laughed. "Are you sure you didn't dream that, Sam?" I wished I had. Fourth night 2 weeks later. The store decided to extend hours for holiday sales. I was back on nights, closing at 2 a.m. The first thing I did after parking was verify the corner of the lot. Empty by midnight. Rain started again. I was restocking the cold section when my radio crackled. White noise at first, then a voice like breathing against the mic. I froze. "Rick?" I said. No answer. I took another deep breath. Then faintly, through the radio, outside. My skin went cold. I set the radio down and walked toward the front doors. Through the glass, under the same lamp, the white van was back, idling, headlights off. Something moved in the passenger seat. A shape, slumped but breathing. I turned around to find Marcos, but he was already at the registers. He hadn't touched his radio all night. We locked the doors, killed the lights, and waited for morning. The van never moved. Final shift a week later. I quit. I gave no notice and felt no guilt. Just done. But the story didn't end there. 3 months later, Tessa called me crying. Her voice shook so hard I barely understood her. "Sam, they found something behind the dumpsters." She sent me a news link. Unidentified man found dead in abandoned van. HarborMart. East Ridge lot. Police suspected he had been living there for weeks, maybe months, and died of exposure. They found a small notebook in the driver's seat. Inside, written over and over, "Don't let them leave." I wish that was the end. But 2 weeks later, I drove past HarborMart at night just to see for myself. The store was closed. Lights off. Yet under that same lamp, a different van sat there, same model, same spot. Engine quietly ticking. As I passed, its brake lights flashed twice. Occasionally, when I park outside my apartment after midnight, I hear an engine idling a few blocks away, steady, low, patient. I tell myself it's nothing. But some nights, I swear I see a white shape parked just far enough down the street that I can't make out the plates. And if I wait long enough, the lights blink once like a wave goodbye. Some horrors don't start with a scream. They start with a hello. It was a quiet evening in 2020, about an hour before closing at HarborMart West Ridge, the kind of suburban supermarket that always smelled faintly of coffee and bleach. I was just picking up groceries, nothing major. Milk, cereal, maybe some snacks. I remember the exact moment I saw him, middle of the canned goods aisle, between pasta sauce and soup. He was just there. Gray hoodie, jeans, neatly trimmed beard, maybe late 40s. He smiled when our eyes met. Evening, he said. I nodded politely. Evening. That should have been the end, but it wasn't. I finished shopping in under 15 minutes. When I reached self-checkout, he appeared again, 2 aisles over. No basket, no cart. Hands empty. He watched as I scanned items, not staring exactly, just there, too close. Pretending to read a candy wrapper, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I paid, stuffed my things into a reusable bag and left. The air outside was cool, with faint mist hanging in the glow of streetlights. I was halfway across the parking lot when a voice called behind me. Forgot something? I turned. It was him. He stood by the door, hands in his pockets, smiling as if we were old friends. No, I said quickly. He chuckled and shrugged. Just being friendly. Okay, I replied, walking faster. When I looked back, he was still standing there, not following, just watching. That night, I told myself it was harmless. Maybe he was just awkward. Maybe he thought he knew me. But 3 nights later, when I returned for detergent, he was there again. Same aisle, same gray hoodie, same smile. This time, he didn't speak. He just watched from behind a stack of paper towels. I moved to another section. He followed. Not immediately, not close. Always 1 aisle over, as if timing my pace. By the time I reached checkout, my pulse was racing. Can you walk me to my car? I whispered to the cashier. She looked up, confused. Sure? We walked out together. The man didn't follow. He just stood near the end cap of frozen foods, pretending to scroll on his phone. When the cashier left, I sat in my car with the doors locked for 5 whole minutes before driving home. I should have stopped going there. But convenience kills logic. HarborMart was 5 minutes from my apartment. The next closest store was 20 minutes away. Consequently, a week later I went again. Late evening. Same routine. Grab dinner stuff, get out. Halfway through the frozen aisle, I saw him, not the hoodie this time, a baseball cap pulled low. But the same posture. He maintained the same slight smile. He noticed me noticing him, and that grin widened. I turned my cart around, left everything there, and walked straight out the door. I didn't look back. That night, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. No message, just a missed call. A minute later, another buzz, unknown number, 2:14 a.m. I blocked it, heart pounding. The next morning, I found a folded HarborMart receipt taped to my apartment door. It was blank except for 1 sentence scribbled at the bottom. You shop late. I went to the police that afternoon. They filed a report. But with no name, no photo, and no video proof, there wasn't much to do. Probably just a prank, the officer said. Still, be cautious. That word cautious followed me everywhere after that. For weeks, I changed my routes, drove in circles before going home, and avoided HarborMart completely. Life almost felt normal again. This all changed on a rainy Friday night. It was close to midnight. I'd stopped at a different store across town, smaller and quieter. As I left, pushing my cart into the drizzle, headlights flared from the far end of the lot. A gray sedan rolled by, slow and deliberate. I couldn't see the driver's face, but I knew that car, or at least, I knew that feeling. It followed until I turned onto the main road and disappeared into the darkness. By the time I reached home, I was shaking. I went straight to my window. The street was empty. For the first time in my life, I slept with the lights on. 2 weeks passed. There were no strange cars in sight. No calls, no notes. Then came Sunday. Bright morning, blue sky, everything calm. I almost felt stupid for being scared. Around noon, someone knocked at my door. I checked the peephole. A delivery man stood there, khaki jacket, cap, parcel in hand. Package for you, he said through the door. I didn't order anything. He smiled. Maybe a gift? Something in his tone made my stomach twist. I looked closer through the peephole and saw the corner of a gray hoodie under his jacket. My breath caught. "I'm not expecting any deliveries," I said loudly. He stayed silent for a second. Then softly, "Are you sure?" I stepped back, heart hammering. When I looked again, he was gone. No package, no footsteps, just the echo of rain starting outside. That afternoon, I called the police again. They came and checked. Security footage from my building's lobby. The camera showed a man standing at my door for exactly 43 seconds. His face never turned toward the lens. He carried no parcel. After leaving, he walked out of frame, and they never looked back. I moved out 2 weeks later. I relocated to a new neighborhood, secured a new job, and opened a new store. For months, peace returned, but you can only outrun a memory so far. Last winter, I was shopping at another supermarket across town. Busy place, music playing, kids running around, the complete opposite of HarborMart. I was checking out when the cashier smiled at me. "Would you like to use your rewards card, Ms. Hill?" I froze. This surprised me because I hadn't provided my name to her. I'd never shopped there before. The cashier frowned at my reaction. "It's in the system," she said uncertainly. "Jessica Hill, right?" "Yes," I whispered. "Why?" She pointed to the screen. "Your number's linked here. Someone used it last week." "Last week?" I didn't, but my throat closed around the words, because the screen showed the time and date of that purchase. Tuesday, 10:47 p.m., and the location? HarborMart, West Ridge. I hadn't visited the store in more than a year. I asked to see the transaction record. One item. Single. Purchase, paper towels. The same aisle where I'd first met him. I drove to the police again, shaking. The officer flipped through the report and sighed. "We can flag your account and change your number, but without footage or ID." The same words. The same helpless shrug is repeated. They promise to monitor the situation. But how do you monitor something that's patient? Is it possible to monitor something that does not pursue you but instead simply waits? It's been 2 years now, no calls, no notes. No van. I lead a quiet and predictable life in a different city. Still, I don't shop after 7 p.m. I don't park under flickering lamps, and I never, ever look twice at friendly strangers, because monsters don't always grab you. Sometimes, they remember you. Sometimes that's enough.